Macbeth by William Shakespeare is an example of a type of play known as a tragedy. Now, Shakespeare wrote in 3 dramatic genres over the course of his playwriting career. He wrote histories, he wrote comedies, and he wrote tragedies. Now, Macbeth is one of what is known as Shakespeare's 4 great tragedies. He did write others, but the 4 great ones are Macbeth, which we are studying, Othello, King Lear, and Hamlet. The key thing about a tragedy, it's a very specific type of play, and examiners will want you to demonstrate your understanding of what a tragedy is, the dramatic form of a tragedy. A tragedy is a play which charts the downfall of an individual, the main character, also known as the protagonist, as a result of a fatal flaw, a fault that they have within their character. So in a tragedy, your protagonist, your main character, starts the play in a position of greatness. Now, that might be a position of greatness such as power. They might occupy a high status in society. And also, and this is the key thing really, they will occupy a position of great respect. The other characters in the play look up to these characters at the beginning. However, your tragic hero, and I'm using quite a few dramatic terms here because examiners like to see you able to use dramatic terms relevantly in your answers. A tragic hero, he is our main protagonist in Macbeth. Our protagonist, our tragic hero, is Macbeth himself. The tragic hero has what is known as a fatal flaw in their character. Now, a fatal flaw is a fault within their character, something within their personalities that causes their downfall. Now, in Macbeth, Macbeth's fatal flaw, the fault that brings him down, is his ambition, or more specifically, his over-ambition. And this is something that we will explore further in future tutorials. So our protagonist, our tragic hero, starts in a position of greatness, but because of this fatal flaw in their character, they suffer a downfall, which means that by the end of the play, whereas they were highly respected at the beginning, by the end of the play, they are in a situation of disgrace. They have either lost their great position and great status, and this is the most important thing, they have lost the respect of the other characters in the play. And I would also suggest to some extent, in fact to a great extent, they also lose the respect of the audience. So just to summarise, a tragedy is a play in which the protagonist suffers a downfall from a position of greatness as a result of a fatal flaw in their character to a position of disgrace. Now, there's another important feature of tragedies that you need to be aware of. Ultimately, by the end of the play, the tragic hero, our main character, our protagonist, is entirely responsible for the decisions that they make. So, for example, Macbeth, as a character, has to take a significant amount of the blame for what happens to him as a result of choices that he makes. So never lose sight of that. Ultimately, the main character is responsible for their downfall. However, in a tragedy, you often have a character or characters who help to influence that downfall. Remember, it's the choices that the main character makes that ultimately results in their downfall. However, you have other characters who influence some of the decisions that the character makes. In Macbeth, there are two key influences on the decisions that Macbeth makes. Firstly, and I'll do them in order of appearance. Firstly, you have the three witches, the weird sisters as they're called in the play, who appear to Macbeth in Act 1 and give him the two prophecies which start him off on the road to his downfall. More about that when we get to those relevant acts and scenes within the play. So one of the key influences on Macbeth's downfall is the witches. The other is his wife, Lady Macbeth, who, like her husband, is highly ambitious, but she is also ruthless and lacking in what we would probably call a moral compass. She has a rather subversive morality, or rather immorality, and she is one of the key influences on some of the decisions that Macbeth makes. But I go back to the point I've already raised because it is an important one and it's worth recapping. Despite the fact that the witches influence some of Macbeth's decisions, despite the fact Lady Macbeth is a key influence on some of the decisions that Macbeth makes, ultimately he is responsible. By giving in to that fatal flaw, that fault in his character, he is responsible for the decisions that he makes that bring about his downfall. So that by the end of the play, interestingly with Macbeth, at the end of the play, he is actually in a higher social position than he is at the beginning. At the beginning of the play, he's a lord or thane in Scotland. By the end of the play, he's king. But Macbeth's key downfall is the fact that he has lost the complete respect of all of the other characters in the play. And most likely, and this is very much down to your evaluation and your interpretation, but he's also lost the respect of the audience as well. That's it then for your introduction to Macbeth as a tragedy. In the next tutorial, we'll be looking at the importance of the 5-act structure of the play Macbeth, and then we will start to look at the acts and scenes in more detail.